When I first moved to Germany over a decade ago, I moved from Beijing, China, where I'd been living for 2 years. And I remember standing on the balcony of my apartment waiting for something to happen. It was a Sunday. The streets were still. There were no delivery bikes weaving through traffic, no horns, no construction noise. It felt kind of unsettling, like the city had been put on mute. And back in Beijing, silence was not a luxury. You learned to live in the noise, the buzz of scooters, the hum of commerce, the daily improvisation of a city always in motion, a city that really never sleeps. In Germany and Frankfurt, the city where I live, by contrast, stillness isn't rare, it's actually regulated, and it even has a name, Ruhezeit. This translates literally to quiet time, but that undersells it. It's not just a quaint tradition or an optional lifestyle choice. It's encoded into German life, both legally and culturally. Between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m., you're expected to keep things down. No loud music, no vacuuming, no DIY projects with power drills. Sundays and public holidays are even more sacred, a kind of national ceasefire from noise. Most buildings include this in their house rules, and while enforcement varies by city and neighbour, the principle still holds. Everyone is entitled to peace. A Ruhezeit is more than just peace and quiet. It's a philosophy. It reflects a deeper assumption that rest is not a luxury, but a right. And that in a shared space, your comfort ends where your neighbour's begins. It sounds pretty good, right? Coming from China, where life spills out into the street and noise is just simply part of being alive, this really struck me as both refreshing and, if I'm honest, also a little oppressive. The irony, right? I know, coming from Orwellian China, how can I say that? Now, the thing is that if I'd come directly from the UK, this wouldn't really have been a culture shock. I think the Brits and the Germans are quite similar in this regard. We don't like to be loud in public or inconvenience others. But the key difference here comes in the communication. The British will tend to just kind of grit their teeth and say nothing, even if a neighbour is being really loud and disrespectful. The British seem to take a kind of sadistic pride in favouring politeness above all else, or maybe it's just the agreeableness of the culture. People really seem to prefer to just get along instead of rocking the boat. Now, the Germans, on the other hand, are much more disagreeable by nature. They will either tell you directly that you're breaking the rules, or they will get building management or some kind of authorities involved. And this is not considered rude. It's more like this is your moral duty to uphold and enforce the social and cultural norms. And the usual thing like, es ist rot, da darfst du nicht rüber, when you're waiting to cross the road, or the silent note under the door telling you that you put the rubbish in the wrong bin. For locals, this is second nature. You grow up learning when noise is acceptable, when it crosses the line. But for newcomers, it often feels like a sort of invisible social test. You're expected to know the rules before you've even learned the language, and the rules just do not bend. It doesn't matter if Sunday is your only day off. It doesn't matter if you're moving house, if you're celebrating a birthday, if your toddler's tantrum doesn't respect time slots. And one of the hardest things about moving to Germany wasn't the language or the paperwork, it was the stillness, especially on Sundays when the city goes quiet. The shops are closed and even the street noise just kind of dies down. You're left alone with your thoughts, and that's not always easy. Back when I lived in China, the noise was constant. There was always something happening, always somewhere to be, somewhere to go, something to do. But here the silence is structured, it's enforced even. And it took me a while to realize that the discomfort I felt wasn't really the silence itself. It was the fact that I didn't really know how to rest. It was around this time that I started trying out meditation, just a few minutes a day. At first it was awkward, but eventually I found something that helped. And lately I've been using Headspace, who are kindly sponsoring this video. And I found it really helpful to get comfortable with silence, and particularly helpful when it comes to sleep. I am really prone to overthinking. I can be exhausted, lie down, and suddenly my brain decides it's time to, for a mental performance review. Everything I didn't do, everything I need to do, it's like my thoughts speed up the moment I stop moving. And the guided sleep meditations on Headspace have actually really helped a lot. They slow me down. They give my mind something to follow, so I'm not just stuck in this sort of spin cycle of thoughts. And they have a whole library of sleep casts, wind downs, and sleep music to help you get to sleep naturally and to get you back to sleep should you wake up in the middle of the night. Now, there's no pressure to be perfect. You don't have to meditate every day. It's just something to turn to when the stillness gets too loud. And so if you want to give it a go, they are offering 60 days free with a link in the description down below. No pressure, just press play and see what happens. Now, when it comes to neighbors, communication really can save the day. If you let people know in advance that you're having a party, or you're getting something delivered, or you need to sort out your furniture, most people are reasonable and understanding, and you should be fine. And in fact, many of you have commented that Germany sounds like an introvert's paradise, and there certainly is an element of truth to that. But it's not really just about social norms. There are actual laws that dictate behavior. And in practice, Ruhezeit places the burden of adaptation on the outsider. It assumes a shared agreement about how life should be lived. But in a changing Germany, that assumption is starting to fray. The challenge is especially real for people used to looser norms. Like Americans, they often bring with them a sense of 24/7 autonomy. Southern Europeans might find silence a little sterile, and for those of us coming from big cities in Asia or the Middle East where noise is the heartbeat of daily life, Germany's enforced calm can almost feel punitive. Even among Germans, opinions are shifting. Younger generations are more likely to work irregular hours, live in smaller flats, and rely on weekends to get life admin done. The rise of remote work has blurred the lines between weekday and weekend, work time and rest time, and the world has changed, but Ruhezeit hasn't. It's really funny noticing the little differences throughout Germany and how people find ways of getting around the rules. At times, it really doesn't feel like a united country at all, but just a bunch of states kind of doing their own thing. Now, one example of this is the Ladenschlussgesetz, or the shop closing law, which mandates that retail stores remain closed on Sundays and public holidays, but enforcement and exceptions really vary by state. Bavaria is really known for its strict adherence to Sunday closure laws, and even small kiosks, which are like kind of corner shops, they are not permitted to operate on Sundays. And so to navigate this restriction, 24/7 vending machine stores have popped up, offering essential snacks and food, drinks and even sausages. And these automated outlets provide residents with access to goods without violating kosher laws. And so they also have zero staff, which is another issue in and of itself. Now, in Hessen, which is in sort of central Germany, kiosks have traditionally been allowed to open on Sundays, but recent decisions have impacted this practice. And there was the example of the supermarket chain Teegut, who faced legal challenges when they attempted to operate a fully automated store on Sunday. And the administrative court in Hessen ruled that these stores must observe Sunday closures, and basically were not allowed to open on Sunday, even though they were fully automated without staff. In Berlin, you have the Späti or Spätkauf, which are like late-night convenience stores. They've become a cultural staple, but the operation on Sundays has also faced legal scrutiny, leading to debates about the role and legality of these places. Kiosks and Bütchen in states with more lenient laws, such as Nordrhein-Westfalen, they remain open on Sundays and really have become like sort of hubs of the community, offering a range of products. And so again, for me coming from China, where small shop owners and supermarket chains really could run their business however they wanted, it initially really was a shock to experience this kind of state control here. So is this an outdated stereotype that needs modernizing? Because here's the real problem. When the government or the church starts dictating when people can open their shops, when they are allowed to work, or how they should live their weekends, it crosses a line. What starts as cultural protection turns into institutional overreach. And that overreach doesn't just affect shop hours, it affects the economy, the culture, and the very idea of personal agency. These kind of mandates create distortions. People work around them in ways that make the system less fair, not more, and you end up with vending machine shops instead of real ones. You end up with underground services and exceptions for the well-connected. You end up with enforcement that punishes the outsider but ignores the insider. It's inefficient, outdated, and ultimately corrosive to the trust that rules like Ruhezeit were supposed to uphold. Regulation is necessary, but when social norms are no longer sustained by shared values and must be propped up by law, that's a sign that the culture has already moved on. The danger isn't just that the rules are rigid, it's that they become a stand-in for actual civic virtue. Now, of course, there's something noble in the idea of Ruhezeit. In a world of 24/7 noise, a country that mandates rest stands out. It says your worth is not tied to your productivity and that peace matters, but peace needs room to adapt. The world is louder now, it's more fluid, more diverse, and Germany, for all its quiet, is no exception. For me, Ruhezeit is no longer just about silence, it's a symbol of what we're willing to protect and what we might need to let go of. Because the greatest test of a culture isn't how well it preserves its traditions, but how well it evolves without losing what made them valuable in the first place. That's it from me. Thanks so much for watching. If you want more from me, my links are in the description below. Check it out. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.